President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping landed in Florida Thursday, the start of their two-day summit at Mar-a-Lago. But it won't be all sun and games at the golf resort. Their first face-to-face meeting will be a diplomatic test for Mr. Trump, who was highly critical of China on the campaign trail. The top priorities on the agenda are trade and North Korea, which sent a reminder of its nuclear ambitions earlier this week when it launched another ballistic missile into the waters off its coast. Eurasia Group's Asia Director, Meredith Sumpter, joins me now from Washington. Meredith, welcome.
Hello, Elaine.
So on North Korea, the president said on Air Force One earlier Thursday that he thinks China will be stepping up. What kind of leverage, first of all, does China have over North Korea? And what kind of incentive, if any, does China have to act in a way that would benefit the United States?
Well, clearly, President Trump has focused on China as central to his efforts to try to persuade Pyongyang to change its provocative behavior. He's been very clear about this leading up to the summit. And to be sure, I would expect that President Trump would ask President Xi to use more of China's economic leverage with Pyongyang to try to compel a change in behavior. China is a large trading partner of North Korea, constituting 90% of the North's external trade. And the Trump administration has focused on what kind of influence can China bring to bear in this equation.
And do you think the president and his staff came into this summit prepared to sort of negotiate with China on these issues? Is this an opportunity more to sort of get to know the leader, seeing as how this is an opportunity to actually meet face-to-face after what was considered by many to be very harsh rhetoric on the campaign trail?
Right. This summit is all about building a relationship. Both leaders are coming to Mar-a-Lago to establish rapport, to take measure of each other, and likely to lay down markers on key areas of the relationship, such as North Korea, as well as trade and investment issues. This should be seen as a start of an ongoing conversation between the two leaders and their administration. So, aside from expecting concrete outcomes from this summit, rather, what you should watch for is the establishment of some sort of diplomatic channel, some sort of framework through which both sides from the top down can begin to first and foremost prioritize what those sensitive areas of the relationship they agree to work collectively on, but then also to begin to try to narrow the divides between the two sides on those issues, with North Korea and trade and investment topping that list.
Well, the president has been putting pressure on China, calling out the country on Twitter, for example, over what he says is our massive trade deficit, and it's something he says will come up in his meeting with the President Xi. What's the reality of the picture when it comes to the United States trade deficit with China? Americans hear that, and for Trump supporters, for instance, that is a point of concern and something that seems to resonate. But what is the reality of that picture, trade with China?
Well, it's a very complex one, and it's not one that a simple, tariff across all sectors will resolve. But still, what President Trump has made clear is that he is determined to make progress on restructuring what he has called a gross imbalance in the U.S.-China economic relationship. And by that, I would expect that he is going to pressure China's president to take moves that would remove some of the market distortions in China's economy, essentially make a more level playing field for U.S. companies in China to begin to chip away at some of this imbalance. But the real risk here, Elaine, is that the expectations of President Trump as to what China needs to do to address the U.S.-China economic imbalance and what China's president is politically willing or able to do in this sensitive political transition year for himself, there might be a misalignment there. And that's the risk here. They could establish a very strong rapport. They could agree to work together on certain issues in the relationship, but you need to watch what actual progress will be made moving forward.
So you're saying that, in fact, the politics of China could essentially be a factor here, and one that is not necessarily something that would be in agreement with what the Trump administration's agenda would be.
Well, certainly I would expect that President Xi will come prepared with some proposals to begin to chip away at the U.S.-China trade deficit. This could be offers to invest in U.S. infrastructure. It could be things such as an offer to have buying missions, Chinese buying missions, come into the United States and invest more. It could be other moves to try to right that imbalance. But these proposals are going to fall far short of the economic reforms, the structural economic reforms that President Trump is aiming at with China.
For China, what is the hope out of this summit? Is there a measure of success that the Chinese are looking for here?
China is looking to do three things. One, President Xi will look to try to shift the U.S.-China relationship from what was a fairly confrontational approach taken by President Trump in the early days of his administration to one that is much more cooperative. He is also likely to try to shape President Trump's views of the U.S.-China relationship and what would be considered feasible progress on some of the most sensitive areas of the relationship that they've identified. Lastly, I would expect that following President Trump's questioning of the One China policy right after he was elected president, I would expect that President Xi would look for President Trump to reconfirm his commitment to the One China policy.
All right, Meredith Sumpter from the Eurasia Group, thanks very much for your perspective. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.